So in a niche way, the dumb phone is blowing up. People are taking steps to avoid distracting tech and tech overreach by putting in small barriers, different friction points in how they consume their technology. Now, this not only helps to curb distraction, but it can also be a great way to save money as well, because the higher tech option is often the costlier one. I often get questions from people asking what's the perfect dumb phone for them, and they usually have a long list of requirements or needs that they want their dumb phone to meet. Today, I want to talk a little bit more about this idea of the perfect dumb phone, whether something like that can even exist, and what is truly needed to make your tech work for you. Let's get into it. But first, if you don't know me, I'm Spencer, and I like to talk about simple living, frugality, and ways to cut down on your technology usage, sometimes by using other technologies. So as somebody who talks a lot about simple living and dumb phones and, distraction-free, single-use devices, I get a lot of questions about what that perfect dumb phone might be. It's not that it's a bad question, and it's one that I've asked myself a lot of times when I've been searching for that perfect device, but I think it misses a crucial point about technology and distraction. There are so many great phone options out there nowadays, basically a phone for every need and price range. Do you want an extremely simple phone that can just do the bare necessities? You can get something like the Punkt MP02 or an older basic phone. Do you want a bit more of a middle ground? Then try something like the Light Phone 2 or a Nokia. And how about a bit more features? Then try something like a mini smartphone like the Cat S22 Flip or the Jelly Star. Or if you want a fully featured tech experience, then any smartphone's going to do it. But a lot of people are still not satisfied with these options, it sounds like. When I hear the perfect list for somebody of an ideal dumb phone, I hear all of the apps and features that you would normally find in something like an iPhone. With maps, banking, Uber, WhatsApp, Spotify, podcasts, and a camera, it sounds like people basically just want a smartphone, but without all of the distraction. Now, I've talked about this in past videos, but I don't think that distraction element is going to be going away anytime soon from any of these smart products. It's just too integral to the business model to keep us hooked on these devices. But I also don't think the dumb phone is going to save you necessarily either. Of course, you can use the dumb phone for some reprieve from distracting digital tech, where when you're out on the town, you can still be reached, but you don't have all of those apps with you. Certainly something like that is beneficial as a use case. But in my experience, when I'm home, I can still distract myself in a ton of other ways, even without a smartphone on hand. When I'm using my Punkt, instead of scrolling Reddit on my smartphone, I find myself reaching for my computer much more often for that distraction. So unless you want to go full out Amish, I don't think that there is a perfect way to escape online distraction, at least using any other tech-related tools. Many people also want to switch to retro technology in some ways, which in a lot of ways can also be quite beneficial. However, I do think there's a bit of a problem with thinking that the tech from 10 or 20 years ago was the peak of all technology and we should just live with that tech and life will be perfect. I'm pretty sure that people from 20 years ago did not feel as if they were living in a technological peak. I bet that they look 20 years back and they wish that they were living in that time as well. A great example of this is one of my favorite writers, Scott Nearing, who was a simple living advocate and a homesteader who lived on his homestead in Vermont and then Maine till the age of 100. He was born in 1883 and lived all the way to 1983. He saw a lot of technologies come up throughout his lifetime. What I found interesting in my reading about Scott Nearing was the fact that he did not want to have a radio in his home. He felt it an intrusion on his peace to have radio waves flowing through the air around his homestead, so he wanted nothing to do with that technology. He was trying to make his homestead like a previous time before the technology of the radio existed. The same happened with Thoreau actually, and you can read about that in Walden. He wanted to go back to a time before the telegraph line. He did not find that technology beneficial or useful whatsoever. My point is that throughout history, people had been dissatisfied with the technology of the time and wanted to go back to a previous era in an effort to escape distraction. Now, I'm not saying that to claim that this tech isn't distracting, but what I'm saying is that we're likely not going to solve it by returning to another decade or era's distracting technology instead. I think the solution here is honestly to find more useful and meaningful ways to occupy your time. The times where I felt the most focus and the least distraction is when I'm engrossed in an activity or a task that I'm passionate about doing, where I'm so taken by this interest that I have no need in my mind to look at Instagram or scroll through Reddit. And certainly you can delete problem apps off of your phone, like the FOMO machine of Instagram, so it's not tugging at you at all times for distraction. I think it's definitely helpful to help yourself in these situations by removing yourself from those distractions as best as you can. But a lot of technologies are super helpful. Sure, we don't need them, but we can definitely benefit from them, and there's no reason to completely turn them away because certain elements of them are distracting. We just need to moderate our use and find better ways to use our time. What we need to do is try to distract ourselves with good things rather than bad ones. So how does one do that? Well, first, I think you need to cut the noise. Turn off the music, turn off this YouTube video when it's over. Grab a pen and a piece of paper, sit down and reflect on what you really want. Scrolling the internet is not my ideal way of spending my time, but like me, many of us just do that out of boredom because we don't have anything better to fill our lives with. So think about what's meaningful to you and do those things. What would you do if you had your perfect day? What would you do during that day? Asking and answering that question for yourself will give you a great starting point as to where you should direct your attention. Once again, certainly these simple tech tools can be very beneficial for curbing distraction. That's why I use them in my everyday life. Though I love many of the tools offered to us by this smart world, I don't feel like I want to have most of these tools on me at all times, on my person as I'm walking around in the world, distracting me from the better things all around me. But before smartphones, you could have wasted your time on internet forums, and before that, binge watching television. There's always going to be something to waste your time with, even for the Amish, I bet. So try some different strategies and see just what works for you. Everyone's gonna have to approach this problem a little differently based on their unique needs. But all in all, I think that generally cultivating discipline through having better habits and using our time more intentionally is the key. Now, we can't just snap our fingers and disappear all of the distractions of our modern world, but we can try our best to distract ourselves with better things. Certainly these low-tech tools can be very helpful, but they're not going to be the silver bullet to this problem. Ultimately, you will be. That's about it for today, folks. Just my thoughts on digital distraction and how we can use our heads to live better in the smart world. Just to sum up one more time, I want to leave you with this idea that it's so important to cultivate better habits so that you don't find yourself reaching for that technology so often that distracts you. There may not be the perfect device that meets all of your needs, but what you can do is you can learn to build skills and habits so that you find that you don't need your phone. And in that case, any device will do. Let me know what you thought of this video in the comments. I'd love to hear from you there. Thanks very much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Hey folks, Future Spencer here. If you haven't heard, I did an interview just a few weeks ago on Radio New Zealand talking all about dumb phones and my process around digital distraction and fighting it. This channel also now has a Discord server associated with it. So if you'd like to get in on the conversation around simple living, frugality, and the low-tech lifestyle, I've placed an invite link in the description, and I would love to have you in that conversation on Discord. Thanks very much for watching, guys, and I'll see you in the next video.